If you follow me on Twitter at The Quartering, which I hope that you do, or on minds.com/thequartering, you know that I've been pretty excited for Greedfall. From the original trailer, I was pretty dang pumped for this game, and it's really rare for me to say so publicly. I don't like to promote video games in case, well, the developers turn out to be trash and attack the fans. And you know what? You hadn't played it yet, and so I still try to tell people, hey, don't pre-order. Now, today, Greedfall came out, and of course, Kotaku is upset that it isn't woke enough. Now, I want to take a look at some of the reviews we've seen for Greedfall, and then we'll look at what Kotaku has to say. Now, for people that actually bought the game and played it, Steam is showing a 9 out of 10 rating, 645 reviews, very positive, with 81% of the user reviews being positive. Now, there are some critiques of this game that are realistic. I really wanted to play Greedfall, but I can't very well justify spending $50 on another game when I still have Astral Chain to play and I still have Metro Exodus to play, but it's absolutely going on my wish list. Hopefully by the time I get it, they'll iron out some of the complaints about the game, and maybe it'll even be a little bit cheaper. But overall, a 9 out of 10 on Steam is exceedingly good. If we look at Greedfall on Metacritic, the review score, the critics themselves, now this is based on just 8 reviews at this point. I wonder how many critics chose not to review this game because they didn't think it would be huge, or how many people may have chosen not to review it because of it being, quote, problematic. Based on 90 user reviews, the game has an 8 out of 10. Also solid. We look at OpenCritic. Top critic average, 76%. A little bit low. I think most games nowadays releasing in the, 8 to 9 range is reasonable. 10s should be reserved for generational games that change the whole landscape of things. So an 8 to 9 is a reasonable score. Now, the critics that recommend it, however, is significantly lower, with just 66% based on 31 critic reviews. You have Eurogamer, 6th Axis, IGN Spain giving it a 7. It's interesting when you look at who who wants it and who doesn't. If you look at, you have 5 or 12 people in the secondary tier, and just 2 overwhelmingly positive. So most of the reviews, according to OpenCritic, are in the middle of the road, but user reviews still remain relatively high. It'd be nice if they showed, if you could separate, maybe I'm just missing it, to try and understand what the overall negative review is. If you remember back when the trailer was announced, people like the now defunct Waypoint were talking about how the concept of the game was, quote, problematic. And here's a good quote, or a good post back from September 6th, just a few days ago. So this game is being a lot of attention lately due to the idea of being the underdog successor to BioWare's RPGs. I think the game looks great. I'm not going to outright recommend it until I play it, but I'm really looking forward to it. And maybe if I get some time to stream in the next couple of weeks, it might be a nice little game to take as a break from World of Warcraft. I'm still playing World of Warcraft Classic about an hour or 2 a day, and that's about all the time I have for video games between working full-time and then YouTubing, 3 to 4 videos a day. I don't have a lot of free time left. As a Dragon Age Mass Effect feel to it, Spiders, the developers of Greedfall, has done previous RPG foyers with games like Techromancer, things like that. Here's the gameplay video. But immediately, you can already see how problematic it is. A fantasy colonial story with a strong connection to imagery of Spanish-English colonizers coming to, quote, native land that is connected with nature and magic, and then exploiting it for their own gain. Okay, so history? Yeah, it's a lot. It looks like, from a lot of videos I've seen, they wanted to address the themes of colonialism at the heart of the game, but time will tell whether it comes off as exploitative or thoughtful. I already know some indigenous friends. Anybody that I know that's Native American, and I have a cousin that all of their boys are Native American. Their dad is Native American, so I suppose 50%. None of them refer to themselves as indigenous people, but whatever. who are already not going to buy it for such connections, despite having a deep love for BioWare style games. Imagine robbing yourself of an admittedly great video game over ideological or over identity politics. I get not buying a game because you don't like the developer. I get not buying a game for, let's say, going Epic exclusive. Faux outrage doesn't seem like a valid reason. I suppose to the people who are deranged and think it is, they feel it's valid. But, you know, there's a lot of people talking about it. And then, of course, Kotaku, you know, has always framed it as a problematic video game. You have this when it first came out, when the trailers came out, Greedfall, a new RPG where the 17th century white man runs into some problems. And there's other articles at the time when they talked about it being problematic. Now, Heather Alexandria is a writer on Kotaku who has spoken on public panels and said publicly that she is, quote, afraid of gamers. She is somebody who writes about video games, but clearly doesn't understand video game culture, doesn't understand legitimate criticisms, and sees everything as a personal attack. Every article I've ever seen on Kotaku, you know, Kotaku does have a lot of benign articles, but it seems like every time I'm referring to hilariously bad articles, it's either her or Gita Jackson. They don't really write about video games. They write about, you know, their political ideologies. Now, I have not enjoyed playing Greedfall, the latest role-playing game by Spiders. That's not because it's a poor experience in terms of how it plays. Greedfall offers a BioWare-esque adventure with branching quests, companion characters, and exploration. Greedfall frustrates me because it's a game of half measures. It's nearly 10 hours that I've played so far, and it fails to pull its disparate threads into a cohesive whole. That, I think, is a legitimate criticism. And she goes on to justify that. In its best moments, Greedfall provides a solid mixture of role-playing elements and combat. Quests offer a variety of solutions based on the items that you have, the skills in which you're invested. High charisma makes it easy to charm your way out of tricky situations, while points in the truant trait will unlock a dialogue that leads to alternate solutions. Sounds deep. With points in science trait, you can make keen medical deductions and else craft potions that can be used for quest lines in the battlefield. Sounds awesome. In an early quest, my master asked me to do this kind of thing. Combat is less enjoyable, but has a certain degree of clumsy panache. Yeah, okay, you can fight with sabers, heavy weapons, large swords, hammers. You can also use weapons that specialize in magic. Fighting usually plays out like other action RPGs, such as The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. You dodge, you attack, you maybe use a spell to trap the enemy in stasis. If the fight's moving too fast for you, you're able to pause the game, select your next action in an impromptu turn-based manner that makes it easier to plan your next move and micromanage teammates. That seems awesome. That seems like a nice little feature to me. All of this sounds fine because it is. In isolation, judge only from questing and combat, Greedfall is a remarkably playable bit of pulp. Whether it's helping my companion solve crimes or outsmarting religious inquisitors or fighting massive beasts, everything works fine, but it's all done in service of a setting and a narrative that is, in early moments, confused. Sounds awesome to me. There's no polite way of saying it. Now we get to how she really feels about the game. Greedfall is all kinds of messed up. Wrapping yourself in the pageantry of the 18th century means recreating the iconography of colonial expansion and the native slaughter, which means emulating a time when supposedly great men failed to do what was morally right, opting instead to do what was politically expedient. To merely call this a tension of Greedfall does it a disservice. It's not just a momentary tension, it's the entire game. The visual language at play in this game harkens back to some vile stuff. Why do people feel like they gotta curse all the time? I'll never get that. It's, again, when you write for millennials, apparently that's what you think they want, but I don't find it a sign of intellect. That isn't to say that no art could be settling, but it needs to be used with an awareness of what this setting actually means. No, it doesn't. It's a video game. It's a fantasy setting. It has magic and giant beasts. Greedfall doesn't demonstrate that level of care. Oh, it's not woke enough. My apologies. It's a set dressing. The magical new world is mostly a playground for the player. Imagine that. Who would want that in a video game? Not a means to examine complex issues. Again, imagine that. Greedfall wears a costume where perhaps not ignorant to what the costume means, but seemingly unwilling to do anything too powerful with it. In the times I played Greedfall, it's clear that while I can alienate factions, there's a great deal of advantage to placating all parties and maintaining the status quo on tier for D. Don't rock the boat. Make sure to bow before your bad-behaving cardinal, even if you want to stab him. Dedicate yourself to a milquetoast middle path that keeps the peace but transforms nothing. So, I never get these kind of criticisms. It's like, nobody's asking for that video game, Heather. You understand that, right? If people actually wanted their video games to be super woke, there would be tons of them. Between all the giant AAA video game companies out there, it's pretty safe to say somebody would be producing this game if there was a legitimate audience for it. But that's not what you want. You want the game to appeal to an audience, but you also want it to force your beliefs on them. The problem is these are opposed. These are two opposites. They cannot exist in the same successful game. Greedfall often pays lip service to the hypocrisies of its various factions. By what right does the Inquisitor have to call anyone a barbarian, as he gleefully ends any native that fails to convert to his religion? Yeah, but that's how it was. That's how it happened. Just because you do something in a video game doesn't mean you're endorsing it. Sometimes it can be a display of just how messed up things were in the past, but it doesn't have to preach at the player of the game and tell them so. It's like these people, as I've always said, read at a second grade level. They need everything written in crayon and presented to them very plainly. They don't want the person who's playing the game to be able to deduce their own opinions. They want the game to preach. They want the game to say what's right and what's wrong. I've yet to see these moments of awareness coalesce into anything actionable. I could butt heads with a bad church official and state my disbelief, but I couldn't intercede as he did a bad thing. Okay, again, people always whining about limitations of a video game. There's been very little opportunities to push back. You might prevent a tragedy here or there, but so long as the game pushes the player acquiesce to formality and political decency, there's no room for any transformative action. I'm hoping this changes in the later segments of the game. The fact that Greedfall tosses occasional scorn against colonial powers and dogmatism only makes it more frustrating that this game that appears to be about upholding and the status quo, not enacting systemic change. Okay, so you knew what the game was about when you played it, right? And you played it anyway, and now maybe you were paid to do so, right? But imagine picking up a game. Let's say you pick up a NASCAR video game, and then whining that it's about racing cars in a circle and not about environmental change. That's how this reads to me. It's like, oh, I bought Madden Football 20, but they don't talk about underpaying college athletes. 4 out of 10 would not buy. I ask, what is Greedfall saying? Well, it's saying it's a fun game, apparently. What messages does it want to communicate to me? What themes are on display? I have no answers to these questions if Greedfall does, but it's not been kind enough to reveal them to me. Okay. Some players may not be bothered by this. You mean all players. For those players, what will matter is whether or not combat is decent. It mostly is. And may matter is whether role play offers options for solving quests. It does. Also, you can probably just get by with high charisma. That Greedfall is a decent RPG and will be enough for some. For me, it isn't. Not right now. That's fine. You write for Kotaku. I mean, this is why you aren't viewed as a friend to the gaming community, while your opinion is laughed at by actual consumers of video games. Because I like how it's pretty telling in this paragraph that you basically poo-poo all the things that matter to actual consumers. People that actually want to play video games. It's like, oh, is the combat good? Yeah, whatever. Is the story good? Yeah, but so what? It doesn't tell people what to think and what to do. It doesn't make any statements. It doesn't correct what I perceive as wrongs. Therefore, game not good. Greedfall might manage to capture some of what made BioWare's adventures great, but it feels aimless. Well, it sounds like you're saying that because you don't agree with what it does. It has so far not managed to speak up and say anything worthwhile, even as it offers meager acknowledgement that something isn't quite right with this world. That lack of conviction so far is a black mark that I cannot get over, which leaves frustration that overshadows everything else. Hopefully the game will continue as I play it. Why wouldn't you stop playing a game you hate? Here, I don't know how to make it clear in an article marked impressions that this is my early impressions with the game and that has been complicated experience. I'm eager to play more. Even your own fans are turning on you. This is why early impressions are a joke. This is why I don't like doing video game reviews. And this is why laughing at Kotaku is fun. Hopefully everyone out there is enjoying Greedfall. It seems like a cool concept to me, an interesting looking game, and I look forward to playing it hopefully around Christmas time. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, before you leave, make sure you leave a like and drop a comment on it. It's the only way to help the channel grow in today's YouTube environment. Above, you'll find a link to subscribe, and make sure you turn your notifications on, or if you just want to check out another video, there's one of those up there too.